Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the incredible places they can lead us to. I have such a special guest today. I am so excited to have her on to chat with me. Her name is Suzy Vadori. She is an author, a book coach, and an editor. Hi, Suzy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. As most writers and authors have crazy imaginations and courage, we definitely have courage to put our crazy stories out there. I'm sure you've done maybe, one or two things you never thought you would. And I would love to hear about one of those today. So will you please share a story with us?
Absolutely. I never thought that I could write full time as a job and also become a certified book coach.
Okay, we were chatting about this just before we started recording. I have never heard the term book coach before. I've heard of books and I've heard of coaches, but I've never heard of a book coach. So can you please explain to me what one is and how one becomes certified and what inspired you to become one?
Oh, such a good story. So a book coach basically is like a personal trainer for your writing life. So we all need that, right? Like writing can be a really crazy time. It's really hard to find all the right information. So I've been in the industry for about a decade. We were talking about my age earlier, and now you're going to be like, what? I was actually a business executive for 20 years before I became, before I started even writing seriously. So it's really been a shift for me, but it brings such a different perspective to the writing world. And I just found myself helping other writers. And then I got into editing because people kept asking me for feedback. And then when I would edit for someone, they're like, I want you to work with me like every week. Can you work with me on my book? And that's basically how I got started in book coaching. I actually did work with a book coach for my first book, The Fountain, which we'll talk about later. I worked with a book coach because I wrote it on maternity leave with my third child. And when it was time for me to go back to work, which I did, I had finished a draft, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I had to do revisions. And so I worked with a book coach to keep me on track. So a book coach does project management, so accountability, and also we work on craft, so I can help get writers' skill sets to that next level. Like if they're currently wanting to get an agent and they haven't been at that level yet, or they want to do traditional publishing and they need to get their writing to that level, I can get them there. And then the third thing that we do is emotional support, right? So somebody to read your pages, somebody to be in the trenches with you, somebody to love your story and your book as much as you do. It's kind of the Cadillac of writing. I'm not going to lie, when you can, invest in that and have that time, but you end up with a book that's completely different from where you started. So it's a really cool process. I'm happy to be part of it.
So it's like an editor on steroids type of thing, because
Yeah, like an editor.
yeah, I've worked with editors. I actually went through 3 editors to get my first book out. The first one was so brutal. She came from the world of academia, not the world of publishing, and literally so brutal. And I couldn't look at the manuscript for 2 years after the notes. And I was just like, wow, I paid this person to destroy my confidence.
Yeah, and I think there's so many stories out there of that sort of lack of confidence after somebody's been really harsh. And I think that's awful. It doesn't serve the writer. I often work with clients who will say, that a teacher told them in grade 3 that they were a terrible writer and then they gave up, right? Like something like that. And it's something that we really hold. And so as a coach, I've actually trained in working with that and making sure that we're not doing that. So there is an art, definitely. I'm brutally honest. Absolutely. I'm always honest. I'm paid to be honest. But I'm also extremely positive. I am not afraid. I know that I can teach anybody to write. So some people need more support in the craft area. Some people need more support in just logistics of publishing or whatever it might be. So yeah, I'm sorry that that happened to you, but I think that that's the danger, especially with critique partners. So professional editors hopefully aren't doing that, but oftentimes with critique partners, people feel like they need to give you feedback whether or not they know what they're doing. And if they don't love the book, they don't tell you, they can't pinpoint why, so they try to correct it. They might try to create a romance out of your sci-fi, or a mystery out of your something else, and so they're sort of projecting onto themselves, and that can be really crushing to a writer and really confusing because you end up with conflicting advice.
Yeah, I think, well, I know she was the wrong fit for my genre. She didn't get it. She didn't get what I was trying to do. And then fortunately, I randomly met a girl at a coffee shop who had cool nails. And I was like, oh my God, your nails are so cool. And she's like, oh, I got them like this for Burning Man. And we ended up sitting and having our coffee together. And she was telling me about a book she was writing, and that she had a phenomenal editor. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just finally went back to my manuscript that I was devastated over because of the last editor. I really need a new editor. And she was so gracious to put me in touch with her editor. And this was somebody who wrote in the genre that I was writing in and just totally got it. So I think also working with people who get you and who get your writing and who believe in your story, like you said, who can be an emotional support, who can love your work with you, is so important. Which brings me to, do you turn down people whose work you can't relate to?
I absolutely would, but I always give people other resources, right? So not the best fit for absolutely everybody. There's only certain genres that I work with. I write young adult fantasy, but I actually edit and book coach other genres as well,
Of
including
course.
thriller and mystery and romance and women's fiction and historical fiction. There's lots and lots of fantasy, of course, lots and lots of different genres that I work with, but I wouldn't work with horror. I just don't really get it. But at the same time, yeah, so I always meet with writers and see if it's a fit, and I ask for a sample, and then we talk it through. And I end up working with lots of writers, like in some capacity, I'll still support them and answer their questions and pass them on to somebody else. So I have a big network that I can refer them to. So yes, absolutely. I make sure that it's a good fit, but ultimately, because I have things out there, people come to me that are already attracted to the style that I have.
Yes.
And so it's really hard to sort of put them with somebody else when they're coming specifically. It's really vulnerable for a lot of writers to actually ask for help, right?
Definitely.
We have this iconic image in movies of a writer going away for a weekend and getting inspired and writing a book, right? That's what they do in the movies. They write it by themselves in a cabin in the woods or whatever. And that's not real. That's not real, guys. It's not real. So people come sort of hat in hand and going like, I'm stuck, or like, I don't know how to get forward. And they're embarrassed about it at first, but like I work with writers all the time. I'm like, I've seen everything, I can help. Like, it's fine. And there's a reason that there's a whole page of acknowledgments in every book saying who helped you with a book. People don't do this by themselves. It's a myth. It's a myth.
Yes. Okay. I love that you brought up the like going away to a cabin and writing for a weekend scenario, because it is so unrealistic. First of all, the idea has been brewing for a year to a decade before you even decide to like write the story, number one. Number two, most people who are writing something for the first time are doing it evenings and weekends in between their regular job that they're committed to because they have to pay rent and put food on the table, and their kids and their family and whatever responsibilities they have in real life. And if people who are juggling all of those things, are able to save up and go away for the weekend, a lot of times the last thing they want to do is spend the whole weekend working.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's totally true. This image, and myself as well. I mentioned that I was a business executive and I always wanted to write a book. I always knew I would write a book. I wrote a lot of half books when I was a teenager. Like I never finished them.
Yeah.
So I sort of took me a long time to finally commit to doing it. But once I did, I still thought that I would keep my job. I was a vice president in operations at a products company. I traveled to Asia every
Amazing.
quarter. Like, you know, like I had a busy job. And I really never thought that I would turn to all things writing and actually be able to. Nobody ever told me writing could be a job, right? Like whoever said writing could be your job? You think of this moonlighting thing, and I was doing it, and eventually I got asked to speak and teach and write and do all this stuff, and I was loving it, and I was using all my vacation days as a vice president to do work as an author, and I loved it. But my family was like, "What are you doing? Like,
When do we get to see you, Mom?
When do we get a real vacation, right?" So it got a bit out of hand, but yeah, there's so much more to writing a book than just the writing part, right? Like there's a lot of focus on word count and getting it out and how quickly can you write it and what is it about and all that stuff. But being an author and being a writer and building a writing life that has all those, you know, you got to promote it, you got to build readership, you got to interact with your fans and your base and come up with new stuff. There's so many things to do as a writer. I mean, you've got a show, there's lots of ways to get out there, but it all takes time, and it's not just about sitting down and writing. So it isn't sustainable at some level to just write a book and then leave it and go back to your day job, right? So yeah.
Yes, definitely. That was actually one of the biggest lessons for me, putting out my book, is I didn't realize that it was going to be almost a full-time job, engaging and promoting and even starting this vlog. I wanted to talk to other authors and connect with other authors because I know how hard it is for us, especially if you haven't been published by traditional pub, if you're self-published and kind of making your own way in the publishing world. I wanted to have a chance to connect with other authors, talk to other authors, hear about their experiences, but also provide content.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for thank you for giving authors the opportunity. But you've struck on something really important, and that is community. Again, we don't do this on our own. The publishing industry is changing so quickly. It's impossible for any one writer to be on top of it all the time. No matter how successful they are, they're going to have, you know, their path really understood, and it's not necessarily what other writers want to do, right? So there's that network and that sharing of ideas and that community that is also what really attracted me to that. It was like there was this gap. I came into the publishing world or the writing world from business, and I was like, where's the guidebook? How do I do this? Okay, somebody teach me, how do I do this? And what I learned, which was super cool and like threw me over the edge, and I'm like, I have to get involved. What I learned was that because writers come from everywhere, right? They all have different backgrounds, which is why this show is so cool, because that's exactly what you're like.
That's what I thought.
You know,
yes.
People don't go and get their MFA and then sell their first book. I mean, some people do, but that's not a very traditional, like it's not the only path. So writers come from everywhere, and they have very, very cool skill sets that they bring, but they also have different goals. And so to build that writing life that they want, I just found fascinating. You know, I'm a builder of business. And so to bring that business mindset into writing and be like, hey, well, you're cool, you're good at this, why don't you do this? And people are like, what? You know, like I just really enjoy working with writers, playing to their own strengths, learning what they want, and then going out and building that writing life for them, whether or not they want it. I mean, yeah, sure. If you want to make it into a full-time job, I can help you probably do that too. But if you still want to do it on the side, that's fine. But like, what are your goals? And do you want, I mean, not everybody needs to start a vlog, and not everybody needs to produce content every week, and not everybody wants to do those things.
No,
I get that.
Of course not. And it was the pandemic that like kind of opened me up to this idea. Like, this is the biggest I never thought I would.
I just love that. And for me, the pandemic was also really a catalyst for moving everything online. I had really built a niche for myself, speaking and teaching, and touring. I did a lot of tours at schools. So being at live events, and I get so much energy from that. And with the
Yes.
pandemic, it's like poof, 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 they just disappeared. And then, I spent spring of 2020 reapplying to get all the work that I'd already won. And then that was kind of like moved online, but it was less and less fun and all that stuff. So yeah, I had to do some searching as well. And that's when I dove in and realized how much I love. I'd been book coaching, but I only had a few clients and fit in amongst, people that came to me because they really wanted to work with me. And then I was like, well, how do I scale that? And that's when I went and sought my book coaching certification, which is from Jenny Nash's Author Accelerator. And that process was really cool because it confirmed all of those things that I was teaching. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but it was cool that it was that and then some, right? Because I would bring my own spin to it. But what it helped me do was scale that business, which I never thought was possible. Like I didn't think it was going to be possible to help more than just a few writers that I, wanted to mentor.
Yeah.
And now I've figured out this way to work with one-on-one clients, and to also, I've got online courses to help many writers. And I never thought that would be me. Like you, I mean, I'm actually, quite comfortable, I guess, talking for a long time. And I do, I have my own blog that is just me, but I didn't know if I would be comfortable stepping out as the expert, or as even knowing how many writers I'd already helped, right? It's a really hard thing to be out there. But then when I realized, and I got that sort of base behind me, and my clients keep telling me, because I put my all into their careers and helping them figure out what they love to do and all of that, and write that book that they really want, and to make sure that it's as good as they want, and teach them how to do that. It's so rewarding. Anyways, yeah, so I never thought, now I have this like whole online presence and empire that I'm trying to build. That was not on my radar a year ago, not at all. And now it's here.
Can you tell us the types of online courses that are available, just to give us like a little taste for anybody out there who's interested in starting their literary journey?
Absolutely. So there's lots of free resources out there. I've got a Facebook group, which is Inspired Writing, and I have a weekly newsletter. So I send out tips and tricks for writers and inspirational videos, that type of thing, but they always have a kernel of something that I teach my clients. So you can learn that way. And those videos are all available on YouTube. And then I also have a signature course, which is the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp. So it's a boot camp for fiction writers. I find it's most helpful to those who have started writing a book and got stuck somewhere along the way. They got a critique and now they're, devastated and they don't know where to pick up from there. I ran it for the first time last spring. I'll be running it again in September of 2021. And hopefully keep running it a couple of times a year.
Great.
It is just like soup to nuts, like everything that you need to get that manuscript polished up, finished off, and get it out, and in a positive way with a community and lots of interaction with me. So it's like a virtual book coaching experience, and it's been so much fun.
I love it. That sounds phenomenal. Anyone out there who is trying to write a book, got stuck writing your book, you definitely need to check this out. And it's coming up this month. Yeah. Fabulous. Do you know what date it is yet?
Yeah, so I have actually a free retreat that's leading up to it, which is the 10th to the 14th of September, 2021. And that's for free. And you can come and try it out, where we'll get you a kick started. And then if you want to join the 8-week course, it's after that. At the end of September, it starts.
Fabulous. That's so exciting. And from here, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about the Fountain book series. Yay. So the first book in the series is called The Fountain. And I believe this is the one you wrote when you were on maternity leave with your third child.
Yeah, well, I wrote a draft. I mean, it took me 2.5 years to finish it. And it took me 2 more years to find a publisher. She's 10 now. So this is
well, it's a journey. Not only does it take a village, it takes a village to come on a journey with you.
Yeah. And I've just been so lucky to have found an amazing readership. Both it's a young adult fantasy, but I also have lots of adult readers, and they've stayed with me through the whole series. The series has actually been 3 times nominated for an Aurora Award, which is Canada's premier science fiction and fantasy award. So I don't know when this is going to air, but if you have time to vote, Wall of Wishes is book 3 in the series, and it's been nominated, and there's still time to vote before September 4th. I don't know if this will be out before September 4th.
No, unfortunately, this won't be out until
That's okay,
October.
but a hat trick of nominations is like amazing. I mean, hopefully 3rd time's the charm, but
but even just to be nominated, to have that recognition, and to have
I'm so honored
stamp on your book, that's amazing. Okay, so I want to know a little bit about the premise of the series, and then I want to know what inspired you to write it, and why at that point in your life did you finally put pen to paper and write the book you always knew you were going to write?
Okay, that's a lot of questions. I will get to all of them. Okay, so the Fountain series is about 16-year-old Ava, and she moves from San Francisco to New England to find out more about her mom, who died when she was 10. And when she gets there, the kids aren't very nice, and all kinds of crazy things happen to her. She gets really upset, and she runs into the woods, and she finds a mysterious fountain like the one that's on the cover of the book. And she throws a coin into the fountain and makes a wish that one of the girls that she just met had never existed. Oh. And when she returns to the boarding school that she's attending, the girl is gone. But not only that, absolutely everything in her life changes. Even her own family has changed. And she has to find out about the magic of the school that she goes to, the history of her own family. She meets the boy. There's a romance in it. It's a mystery. It's lots of fun. So that's the fountain. That was the first premise. And then, of course, if you have a fountain in a world that grants any wish, and a bunch of students that can make wishes, these 2 books are the chaos that ensues. So it's lots of fun. But the fountain, really the germ of that idea, I was on maternity leave with my 3rd child. I'd been wanting to write a book for years and years in my whole life, and I never knew what I wanted to write, but I knew that I wanted to write something that my kids would also be able to read one day, which they all have. But I was looking at my kids, and I wanted to give them the world. And I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and I don't think that's how kids were viewed at the time. But now, like, I just really want to give my kids everything. But I know I can't do that because they'll be spoiled, right? Like, I can't just hand them the world or make stuff happen because they want to. But yeah, that's where it kind of started. And I thought, well, what if a well-meaning founder of St. Augustus, the boarding school that they attend, what if he gave the students a fountain that gave them everything they ever wanted, right? Exactly what I just said that you shouldn't do. I thought maybe I would do in this book. And so what would happen? What would the consequences be? And how would they learn to decipher what their actions meant, right? And of course, some of the kids make dumb wishes that don't affect anything, and some of them change the world. And so the layers of changing and everybody's different interests, and erasing history and erasing the past and changing what happens, and all of that layered together really appealed to me. It created a really, really complicated sort of story arc for the entire series, but I love that. I mentioned I was an operations professional. I love math, so I was like trying to work it all out. So it got really complicated, but really what struck the readers of the fountain was the relationships in it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize what I'd written until it was published, if that makes sense. I didn't know that, I mentioned that it's been 3 times nominated for an Aurora Award, but I was surprised the first nominations, and I had, the science fiction and fantasy longtime readers and writers contacting me, a male in his 60s saying, wanting to talk about the relationship between the main characters, the romance. They're like, how did you do that, right? So it was interesting because I was in the process of writing the West Woods, and I realized people were connecting with the romance. And I was like, uh-oh, I wrote a romance and I didn't put any romance in book 2. So then I had to rewrite book 2 because I was like, oh no, my fans are going to kill me. But yeah, that part kind of came naturally, I think, because it was sort of about where I was at the time in my life. And yeah, so now all I write is fantasy romance. So it kind of, yeah, I never thought I would write a book about romance. I meant to write a time travel or mystery book. But yeah, so you never know until you get it into the hands of your readers.
Well, you know what? It's not unusual that you wrote a book about a teenage girl who was trying to find her place in the world, and romance snuck into that, because especially during teenage adolescence, that's when teenagers start exploring that
La la
side
la
of their
la
psyche.
la la. No.
Well, I know
As
you're a
a
mom with
teenager, so I'm
teenagers.
like,
You're like, I don't want to know.
and my kids are teenagers. I already want
I'm
to
not
hear
even talking about the physical sense of it, but that, they start having feelings. They start, having the desire to have a boyfriend, or to hold hands, or to have their first kiss. That desire for love and connection is the undercurrent of life. So it's hard to keep it out of things.
No, and I didn't mean to keep it out. I just didn't know that it would be the
Well, I mean,
thing
it was
that
a subconscious.
defined it,
It was a
right?
subconscious thing for you.
Yeah,
It went in there, almost un almost unidentified.
yeah.
You
And I
know,
think, and it's funny because now, a decade later, when I've like thrown myself into studying craft and understanding and helping so many, like I've helped hundreds of writers. And so it's funny because one of the big distinctions between a middle grade book and a young adult book would be that stage, like you said. So a middle grade book, which is written for 9 to 12, might have in it like family and the unit and where you fit in that. Whereas as you go on, kids start to identify with their friends more and less. And so
exactly.
we call it kill the parents, right? Like, how do you get rid of, you send them to boarding school, which is what I did in this series, or you send them away, or they have the Disney princess syndrome where their mother is dead. All of these things need to happen because kids start to really identify with their friend groups and not with their other units, right? Or their family or their upbringing as much.
Wow, this sounds so good. I love the supernatural aspect of the fountain, and it's really complicated in terms of not just one person being able to get wishes granted, that anyone can get these wishes granted, because like you said, just the layering and the keeping the story straight.
Like I said, I know so much more now, and that if I were to reread The Fountain, sometimes I get readings from it. I know that there's things that I would change, but I'm still so proud of it because it connected with readers, right? Like that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, the layering of it and understanding it really made me very aware early in my writing career that you there's such a thing as having too much, right? Your reader's not going to follow it. So you got to kind of pare it down and make sure it's all kind of pointing in the same direction, or you're going to lose your reader.
And that's why you write a series instead of just one book.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great tool to be able to, fit everything in. So please tell us, where can we find you? Where can we find your book coaching courses? And of course, where do we find the Fountain series?
Absolutely. So you can find me the easiest places on my website, suzyvadori.com. And I assume that you'll put my spelling of my name because that's the only tricky
Yes,
part about
I'll
that.
have all the links below to make it
Yeah,
easy for
and
everyone.
suzyvadori.com. You can hop on my weekly mailing list, which is inspired writing, and then you'll get all the tips and tricks and all the information about the courses and everything else. And also a direct line into me because I answer all questions every day, all day for free for writers. If you want to work with me, that's different. But yeah, I answer questions all day long, and I just love hearing from writers and where you're at, and if there's a way to get you unstuck. I also have an Inspired Writing Facebook group. Come and join us. Would love to see you in there. Again, I've got a team that will answer questions. Myself, I'm in there all the time, and my team's in there as well. And just such a positive, supportive group. It's very different from, I'm just so excited that it's kind of turning out the way that I'd hoped, because so many of the groups out there are just like negative and not as helpful. And so I'm so proud of the group of writers that we have in there that are really willing to help. Um, And then, yeah, that's where you can find me. And where to find the books, they are available anywhere that you can buy books online. So if you put in my last name, that's the easiest way to find them.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing and giving me an education on the book coaching, because that would have been very helpful when I embarked on my journey of writing and putting out my first book. You probably would have saved me some time and some tears. So I'm
Yeah,
so grateful to know that this is a resource available to writers. So thank you so much. And your books sound wonderful. I look forward to diving into the fountain. And I want to thank all of you out there in the interweb for tuning in today. I want to challenge you to do something you never thought you would do. Please let us know in the comments what it is and where it leads you. Have a magical day. And thank you again, Suzy. This was wonderful.
thanks so much.